All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar about the new application builder module from Baserow. I'm here today with Frédéric Duchy, who's going to do the live demo, which he's our product specialist and has been doing a lot of work on the application builder. I'm Olivier Mas. I'm one of the co-founders and the chief revenue officer here at Baserow. So thanks for taking the time today to come with so many people. And what I'm going to do is just to give a little bit of introduction in what we're trying to do with the application builder and why we build it and what are the type of use cases that we intend to accommodate for. So let's get started with the first question is why did we actually build an application builder? There's a lot of application builders out there in the market. So why did we decide to also go that way? And one of the primary reasons was that a lot of the database users needed a specific user interface. That means that instead of having people just interacting with the data in the database, they also need to have very user-specific interfaces. So that's one of the big reasons, and you will see how we do that with the application builder. The second one was around visualization of data from various sources. So instead of just having data from Baserow in the database, our customers ask, well, couldn't we build an interface so that we can surface different data from different sources and also be able then to update that data within Baserow and then also, later in the other data sources. Then another big reason was how to provide public access to specific data. We do have within Baserow database the role-based access control, which is basically managing user rights at the workspace level, at the database level, at the table level. But sometimes you want to have people from outside your organization or within your organization to really have access only to specific fields and specific parts of a table, right? Which becomes very complex to do with a role-based access control, where an application is much more suited to that use case. So whereby people need to update certain tasks, or maybe you want to expose data to customers or to suppliers or to patients, for instance, and that people will have access to that data without having access to the data source itself. And that kind of links to the other reason, which is the protection of your database, right? You're going to create a database. You're going to make sure that it's well structured, that you have the data that you need in there, the different views, the different formulas, and you don't necessarily want everybody to go and interact and change things in the database. So having an application builder in front of that is a way to protect the access to the data by filtering that and by exposing certain views. And then we have a lot of users that ask us, well, I'm using Baserow as a database, and then, I need to basically use another no-code tool or, code an application, and then it would be a lot easier if I would have one single platform where I can first structure the data, build the database, have people use that, and then also be able to build from there these applications on top of that. So that is now possible. And then the last important part is that as we talk about specific processes whereby you want to have some business logic, from A to Z into a process, you need to have a certain way to organize that business logic. And typically that is done within an application. So these were kind of the main reasons. We continue to, have the same philosophy about, it being open sourced, having an open core business model, still built on the fact that we want something to be very scalable. So not just build an application for an MVP or for a small use case, but actually, if you build something, be able to accommodate for a large number of users, for a lot of data, be able to self-host it for security reasons. So all of that remains the same as what we have in the database, and we translate that philosophy into the application builder module. So in terms of use cases, and we've already seen people building quite a lot of these, what we really target here is on one hand portals. So these are, it could be employee portals, could be supplier portals, could be customer portals, could be patient portals. So anything that has to do whereby you as an organization, you create a database and then you want to expose that to, I'd say a certain number of people, not in the tens of thousands necessarily, but more hundreds or thousands of people that will be having access to their data, be able to log in with their passwords and their email address, having the information that is important for their specific project, for their specific environment within the company, a supplier who wants to have a view on what's happening with their parts, a customer who wants to understand where he stands in terms of the deliverables that you've promised to them. I mean, you can imagine a lot of use cases, but portals are really something that we're going to focus a lot on because it's something that is immediately needed in a lot of the organizations that we work with. Then we internal tools, right? It is predominantly, around task management. It could be contact relationship management. I'm not calling it customer relationship management because I think there's a lot of CRMs tools out there already, but we have a lot of requests related to more specific contact management whereby an application is really useful. HR tools that could be, employee onboarding. It could be applicant tracking. Think of a repository for information. So internal tools are really suited for the application builder. Then the third use case would be around intranet. This is where you want to centralize data, that is important for your employee, for instance, for your teams. Where do you put your policies? Where do you put your information about the company? So really an internal intranet for the company employees in order to access the information in a centralized way. And then the last bit, which is something which is in development, is around dashboarding and graphs. So visualization of data from not just Baserow, but from various sources moving forward, and ensuring that you have a very quick and easy way of interacting with the data in forms of information. So some of the core concepts we're going to cover today are the ones I'm going to explain you now. So as you see, when we'll see that live in a minute, but when you went to Baserow before the application builder, you pretty much had a database, and you could start to within your workspace create the database, create the tables. Now you'll be able to have an application that you will start, and an application consists of a number of pages, right? So we'll cover that. So it's different than tables, but a page is basically what it says, right? It's an application page, and on that page you want to visualize specific data, and then you'll be able to construct that directly within the builder. We have the concept of elements, and elements are the different ways of adding visual elements within a database. So that could be a link, it could be an action button, it could be a picture, it could be an iframe, for instance. So we'll go through all the elements that we have today, and as we continue to do the releases of the application builder, we'll continue to add a lot of these visual elements. Then we have the concept of data sources. So like I mentioned, the idea of the application builder is that you're able to expose specific data into an application. And right now we have one data source, which is Baserow. So we really started with the one of our own database. But as we continue to evolve, we're going to be able to expose data sources from various sources. That could be another database, that could be data from Airtable, it could be data from another system that you want to resurface. So the whole concept of data sources is basically where you select which data needs to be shown, and then also when something happens on a specific element, then it needs to create a specific action. So for instance, if an event happens and if someone click on a button on your website, that actually on the back end something happens within the database whereby a value is updated or value is added, and that is the whole concept of an application. And then lastly, the integrations. That is something that is not yet ready, right? So this is whereby you'll be able to integrate the application builder with other data sources, and that's going to be pretty powerful compared to some of the other competitors that we have with the markets. That we don't want to close it just to the database of Baserow. We'll open it up to pretty much any data source as we continue to build out that capability. So that's for the internal part of the application builder. And then what makes it really interesting is that you can publish that externally, right? So we'll cover the concept of domain. So you can pretty much create a domain whereby you direct your website visitors or your application users to, and they can log in. You know, we'll show you how you can do the authentication of a user who's actually a user that might never interact with the database of Baserow and only interact with the application, right? So that is pretty powerful. It's also quite different from some of their competitors, whereby you have to be, a user, a licensed user, or a free user into the database in order to be able to use the application. In our case, we kind of made it public by design. So that means that a database user, automatically has the application builder module within the capabilities. That user will be able to build applications, will be able to publish that. But then you might have users which do not interact with the database and are just public users, and they'll be able to go to a domain and register themselves there, and then have access to the application without ever having to engage with the database of Baserow directly. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Frederick. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and hand over to you, Frederick, to take us into the tool itself. And I'm going to mute myself here.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for the introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone. So let's dive into the application builder. Let's start with sharing my screen. Yep. Okay. So we're gonna talk about all the concept that Olivier already mentioned, and we're gonna do this by building an application for the organization Active Aura. Active Aura is an organization that organizes sport events, and they need staffing for those sport events. Actually, it's a database that's in our template library. So let's have a look at the database. So my organization, they organize events. Events have a name, a description. Each event has a certain requirements for staff members. For example, the 10K fun run, requires 15 members, and it's a duration of 6 hours. Each event is scheduled multiple times. So in my schedules table, I have a unique code for each event. It's organized on a certain date and time. It's a certain type of event. It's organized in a certain location. I copy duration and staff required. And I add team members, and those are internal members. Those are members who are working for my organization. I add team members to them. I have a coordinator, but I also have volunteers, and volunteers are external people. So they are not working for my organization, and therefore they don't have access to my database, and they are really great use case for the application builder. So I said that an event is linked to a certain location. So I have a database with location information. And then, of course, I have my internal members, so all my employees. And I have a list of my volunteers. And you already see in my database, since the release of Baserow 1.23, we have a password field. And a password field allows to only set a password for an external user. So there's no way for me to read this password. I can only set it. And yeah, of course, volunteers are registered for certain events, just like my employees. So I created two applications, like Olivier already mentioned. The application builder can be used for portals. It can also be used for internal applications. So As an internal application, I have built a dashboard for my staff members that say, okay, those are all the upcoming events for this month. And those are all the upcoming events where there is still understaffing. So the required staff is higher than the people who actually registered to help on the event. So I can click on the details button and check the details for each event. I have my details here. I get information from my locations table with the image, and I use external data. It's a widget that I embed that shows the weather conditions. Then I have the staffing for this event. So those are the team members that are registered, and those are the team members that are still available. For my volunteers, well, those are the ones that registered, and those are the ones that are available, and I can contact them. Major difference between team members and volunteers is I can add my team members, I can add my employees. For example, I want to add Alan. I click the add button, so I want to add Alan Tyson for this event. Okay, I add him to the event, and I see that Alan here is added. I only have a deficit of 1. Let's add Sasha. And now I don't have a deficit anymore, so the event is fully staffed. My second application is for the volunteers. So volunteers need to identify themselves. I have a login screen. So I identified as Anita. And those are the events that are still looking for volunteers. Those are the events where Anita already signed up for, and those are the events that she has signed up for, but these events are in the past. Again, I can click on the details. So we're still looking for volunteers. Yes, I see the same details over here, and Anita can sign herself up for the event. So it's added over here. Okay, I hope you like the application. Let's dive into how we build the application. So first of all, let's go back here to the main page. I should have implemented a navigation. Okay, so the main page, I have a data source, and the data source shows me my events. Well, let's create a new application. Call it demo application. And if I have a new application, I have some settings. Like Olivier mentioned, I can set a domain, for example, a custom domain where I do the hosting myself, or I can use the .baserow.site domain. For example, I think that webinar demo is still available. I register this domain. I have in my settings also integrations. So for the moment, only local Baserow databases, but we're working on other integrations. I have my users, which I will be using for the volunteers application, and I have my team. So I can play a little bit with all the default styling, setting a primary color. Let's have a look here, a secondary color. And for example, my heading can also have a certain color. So you see that my colors are automatically adjusted. Each element has a styling tab. The options are rather limited for the moment, but they will continue to improve in each release. Okay, so I have some elements over here, and let's say in my demo application, I want to see all the locations. So first thing I need to do here is creating a data source. I create data source, I call it locations. I can pick whatever name I want, but it's a collection of locations, so locations looks like a good name. Okay, will I return a single row or a collection of rows? It will be a collection. It will be from my local workspace, and I only have one database here. So let's say that I create a new database, a test database. Well, then I have multiple databases here, but everything comes from my event staffing database. I want to have the table locations, and yeah, my view, let's pick all locations. I can set additional filters. So I can say, okay, the address must contain this thing, or type must contain outdoor, for example. And then I have my data source. I want to display the data. And for the moment, we have one element that can display a collection of data, but we're working on other elements. But for the moment, we have the table element. And for the table element, I say my data source is locations, and there are 4 locations found. So I immediately have a live update of my data source. And I will set my first column. For example, in my first column, I set the name of my location. So the title is name. It will be a text field. I have the choice a text or a hyperlink. And the value will be the name of my location. My second column can, for example, be the address. And over here, I see all the fields from my table. So I can here pick the address. And the last field can be the type. And the type in my database is a multiple select field. And here I can say, okay, type, pick all the values you have and show me the text. So if I have outdoor, I have trail, comma, outdoor, outdoor, comma, trail. So it's possible to show multiple values. Okay, so what have I done? I have created a data source and I have filled it with data and show it in a table. Next, I want to build a master detail view. So if I click here on one of my locations, I want to see the detail page of this location. Okay, I'm gonna remove the examples page and I'm gonna create a new page and I call it location details. And I'm gonna pass an argument to it. And the arguments can be done through the path variable. So the path of this page is location details, but I want to pass an argument to it. And I do this with adding a colon. Once I have a colon, I can type something, for example, ID, and it recognizes this parameter. I also can add a second, a third, a fourth, and so on. So I can add actually as much as I want. Okay, I just need to pass the ID. The ID is a number. You can also pick text if it's a non-numeric value. And I add this page. I have again a blank page. And I need again to add my data source. So a new data source. Now I have one location. Or I can say location details. Name is really free. Get a row from my local Baserow, from my staffing database, my locations table, and the row ID is the argument that I'm passing. So I have defined my data source, and now I can use it to display data. So my heading, I'm going to show the name over here, and I also want to show an image. So my image will be a URL. I'm going to take the picture field, the first picture, and I picked the URL so it displays my picture. Okay, so this shows how you create the master detail view. So how have I done this for my employee application? Let's have a look at the home page. Well, I added an image as a banner on top by uploading an image. It's a static image. I insert the header element, gave it a text and a little bit of styling, a border with some color. And here I have my data source. So my data source this month. And this comes from my schedules table. And I created a filter already by selecting a view. So I have a view, all scheduled events for this month. And if I have a look at my database in my schedules table, this is a view from my table where I already set the filter that date and time must be within this month. So instead of filtering in my application builder, I already do the filtering in my database. Okay, I have a details button here, and yeah, I haven't shown this in my demo application. So how do I link my first page to my second page? Well, through a link, and I can do this in a separate field where I say, okay, colon name, just a dash. Type is a hyperlink, text is details, and I'm going to navigate to location details, and I have this one argument I need to pass. Well, this will be the ID of my location, and that's for every data source. So my locations table has a name, picture, address, type, events hosted, number of event hosted, and geo object field, but automatically you get an index and ID field that identifies your record. So the ID is always unique. And I pass this ID. Okay, let's have a look. Let's publish my application. And let's open the application. Can take a couple of seconds because it's the first time that it's rendered and loaded. So I have my Lost Lagoon, I have my address, I have my type, and if I click details, well, actually I can see the details for Lost Lagoon. Lovely lake shows a second element. So this allows me to build a master detail page. Okay, back to here where I did the same. One additional thing, I have this green or red dot. I created this with a field. So in my schedules table, I have the deficit, so the number of employees I still need. If it's 0, well, 0 is perfect because then my staffing is okay, is sufficient. If deficit is greater than 0, well, then I show a red dot. And those are the small visual elements that make my application a little bit more attractive. In my home page, in my first column, I can add multiple fields. So I say my data source, show the symbol, which is the green or the red dot, and also show the actual name of the event. If I want, I can show additional things. So like the duration, for example, between parentheses, I can show the duration. And now this is immediately added. So you can concatenate multiple fields into one single column. Okay, so far for my home page. Going to the event details, well, I already shown most of the techniques. So again, I create a data source, event details. I pass the argument. I get a second one, location. It's a list of rows because I don't directly have access to the ID of the location. Otherwise, I need to pass it as an argument. So I say, okay, pick multiple locations, but only the ones where event hosted is the ID of my event. So since an event is always hosted in one location, I'm 100% sure that I always get one record back. Other data sources is my available team members. This comes from my employees table where the events registered team members doesn't have the ID of my event. So in my employees table, if I look who is registered for the event, if they haven't registered, then they are available. The same for volunteers. If they haven't registered, I assume that my volunteer might be available. Okay, what else do we have here? Email. So my the owner, coordinator of the event, I send it to a custom URL, and this is mail to followed by the email address of the person. If I now click on it, so let's go to my application. If I click on it, well, you won't see it probably, but it opens up my email client and I get a window that allows me to email the person that is responsible for the event. Another thing I have here is the iframe element, and you can actually do really cool things with the iframe element. I now use it to implement a weather widget. So I embed the iframe and I pass the geo object location to set a certain location, the width, height, and some other arguments. But if you push this to the limits, you can also use it for some charting. For example, it's another demo application that we have created, and well, I have used the iframe element to implement a timeline view. Now, timelines are coming into Baserow within the next quarter, I think, or at least within 2024. But it shows the power of the iframe element. Also, if I click an element here, I can have donut charts. So actually, you can implement everything through the iframe element, which makes it really powerful and really open. So back to my application. What else we have here are my registered team members. And I said that the table element is for the moment the only element to show a collection, except if you want to show all your elements just in a row. What I've done here is, again, I make a concatenation, registered team members, and for those wondering what are those stars in front, well, it's Markdown notation. So you can have rich text within the application builder, and Markdown, two asterisks next to each other, is saying the same as put this in bold. So put registered team members in bold. The field count team members is injected, and then I have my team members. Pick all the team members. I can show the IDs, but doesn't tell very much. I pick all the values and then all the values are shown. Okay, then my available team members, and next to it I do the same with my volunteers. As you might have noticed, I use the columns layout a lot. So actually what I have here is 3 columns. What I have here are 2 columns. If I switch to mobile view using columns, well, it really makes my data more responsive. So if I look at this from a mobile view, it puts everything on top of each other. If I shouldn't use, or if I hadn't used the multiple columns next to each other, then it would squeeze everything together. But now I have, yeah, let's say a nice or an acceptable, maybe, yeah, this should be centered as a content, but it's an acceptable mobile view. Okay, so here in my table, again, I have 2 links. For my volunteers, I assume a volunteer, you cannot add a volunteer without asking something. So I just gonna send him an email if I contact him. For my team members, well, I assume that I can add team members that are available. I ask here the events. So how many events have they registered for? And maybe it would be nice if they are sorted based on the number of events they have already signed up for. So let's go back to my data source. My available team members, I want to add some sorting based on the count of their registrations, and I want it from low to high, so that people who haven't registered a lot are on top. So I can do additional sorting here. And if I press the add button, well, then I go to a new page, my page add staff, and I pass 2 arguments here. First of all, the event. So what event do I want them to sign up for? And the second one is the ID of the staff member. Who am I signing up? Okay. So now I see by default that I'm going to add Alan Tyson for the 10K fund run. And you also see 2 numbers here on top. And this is my data preview. So if I change this number 1 to, for example, 3, I should see, maybe after refreshing my page, yep. So the first one is my event, and the 10K fun run is changed to stretch sesh for health. So if I change it again to number 2, for example, it changes the event. So the live preview, makes it really easy to design your application. If I want to have a different team member, let's say number 6, well, I changed Alan to Hugo. Again, I have 2 columns, so if I switch to mobile, they come nice on top of each other. And then I have a form, and a form allows you to take multiple actions. Let's go back to my demo application first. I have my location details. So let's implement a new field here, a text field. And in this text field, I want to show the address. Okay, let's add a form over here. And this form will contain 2 fields, a text input field with the label name, and the default value will be the name of my location. Second, new text input will be the address, and default value will be the existing address for the location. I have a button, and I'm going to call it update location. In my events tab, so I have 4 tabs: general, styling. So for example, if I want to have a background color over here, this one, well, let's change it a little bit. So I can do some basic styling. Visibility, I come back to this later, but some elements like a form button, they have events. So when I submit my form, I want to add an action. First of all, I can show a notification, I can open a page, I can log out the user, I can create a new row, or I can update a row, and I want to update something. What do I want to update? Well, my event staffing database, locations table. The row ID will be coming from my argument, which is a unique ID for that specific location. I want to update the name, and the name will be updated with the data from my name field in my form. Same for my address, will be updated with the address field from my form. Type, event hosted, and geo object will be left like they were. So I only change name and address. Okay, let's go to preview mode. So location details, instead of number 1, if I want to change number 3, I change the argument over here, and I have a new location. Okay, let's say Lost Lagoon Park, for example, and let's change to 404 E Horner Lane. Updating my location. It should be updated. So let's have a look in the database, locations table. And indeed, Lost Lagoon has become Lost Lagoon Park, and the address has become 404 E Horner Lane. Okay, well, only sad that I don't really see that it's updated. So if I refresh here, well, I see the updated elements. But I want to add a second event here. So when I updated my location, I update a row, but I also want to show a notification. Title, for example, success, your location has been updated. Preview again, update location, and I have the notification here that it's a success. I can also reload my page to have the newest data. Okay, for my employee application, I do something similar, but it's a little bit more tricky because I have a linked field. So if you check the database over here, I have my team members, and my team members is a link to table field to my employees table. So a little bit more tricky, but perfectly possible. What I have here is all my team members' names in a list. So actually with the formula, I put them all listed after each other, just like I would do with here team members all value. And then I have my new team member, and my new team member, well, it's the name of the employee element that's here in my data source. So in my data source, I get the event and I get the employee. If I add it to the event, well, what happens here is team members is already registered members, comma, my new team member. And that's required for a link to table field, because otherwise it would erase all the members that are already registered for the event. And I want to add someone. I don't want to replace everyone. So that's the small workaround for it. Okay, so far so good. So what have we covered so far? Let's see. General settings, creating new data source, creating master detail scenario, how can we manipulate data, how can we embed external content, and we saved the best for last. How can I authenticate external users? Well, in my volunteers table, so this is a table, now it's volunteers, it can be customers, clients, whatever. Those are people that are stakeholders in my organization, but they are not part of my organization. And I have their name, phone number, email, and I have a password field. So password, it's a new field type. I would say it's the newest field type, but have a look at this AI prompt released since this morning. Also a very interesting feature. But let's focus on the application builder and the password field. What I can do, I can change the password. I can set a certain value. No, I don't want to update, but it's not possible to read it. I can only change it. So once your volunteer has set a password or you have assigned a password to them, it's not possible for other users in your database to read their passwords. So this is completely safe. Okay, in my demo application, let's go back to the settings. And I have my users here. I'm going to add a new user source from my Baserow table, a table that has the authentication. In my workspace, I'm going to call it volunteers. Let's create it. It's in my event staffing database in my volunteers table. Their email address is in the email field, their username in the name field, and their password in the password field. So just ticking the boxes, click save, and I have actually created a number of logins for my volunteers. So in my demo application, I'm going to create a new page, being the login page. And I'm going to add a form. And by default, we have a login form. And my user source will be my volunteers. I can have multiple user sources, but now I have my volunteers. Doesn't need to take the entire width, so can be a little bit a smaller form. And yeah, let's say once I've logged in, I can go to my home page. So after login, add action, open page, and I'm going to open my default page. Or maybe, no, I'm going to play around with the settings a little bit. My home page will navigate to /home. And my login page will actually become the root page, which is just a /. So if I now publish my application, the first page I will be seeing is my login page. And let's have a look here from my volunteers. I can already tell you that I set the password for all my users to webinar. So if I have this email, And I did something wrong. It logs in, but, oh, sorry. Yeah, I think I made a mistake with my second action. Let's see how we can fix this. So after login, open page. Yeah, of course, you can't open yourself. I changed the path. So for everyone that has to do a webinar once, never make last minute changes to your demo. Let's have a second test. Okay, welcome to my application builder. We're in and we can see everything. But some people might have the question and might be ready to type, hey, what if I just say navigate to webinar-demo.baserow.site? Well, /home. It's also possible for me to see your data. And that's why we have the visibility. So let's go to my home page. And the visibility of this table, well, it's for logged in visitors only. So publish again. Refresh. I'm going to my root. So I see it when I'm logged in. And now let's remove my credentials here. Okay. So if I refresh it, now my table has been moved. Yeah, you probably haven't noticed it because my other screen wasn't shared, but I just removed all the cookies from for this page so that my user is no longer authenticated. Okay, and that's actually the same thing I've done for my portal over here. So I have a login, link to volunteers, then they go to the home page, and you can see it over here in preview. It's blurred out a little bit. This means that my tables here are only visible for logged in users. Otherwise, they're not visible. We're also working on hiding entire pages so that you don't have to work element by element. But until then, a good idea is always to work with containers. And we have columns. And you can actually have one column that serves as a container for multiple elements. Hide this container and you hide all the elements inside your container. And I have two pages over here, event details. Event details just has an ID, and event details with sign up, well, it's a page that also passes the ID for the event, but I have my form to register a volunteer. And in my home page, for where I'm looking for volunteers, well, my hyperlink goes to event details with sign up. And if you're already signed up, you don't need the form, so I navigate you to a different page. Okay, I hope you liked the demo. Two more small things. First of all, our roadmap. So the application builder was released with Baserow 1.22. It's actually still in beta. And you can find a roadmap on our website. So the roadmap for the application builder. Support for templates is in progress, just like styling options. And for the next versions, we're working on field element and especially the repeat element. So where it's now only possible for a table to show a collection of elements, with the repeat element, you can style a container for one element that is automatically repeated. Also working on advanced permissions, sharing page elements so that you can have sticky navigations, footers, and so on. And finally, I want to promote a community, community.baserow.io. We have a category especially for the application builder where you can put all your questions you have. So just start building things with it. If you're stuck to something, ask it in the community, and we're always happy to help you. Okay, that's it for me for the moment. So I already see some questions popping up. So Olivier, we're starting with questions.
Yes. So,
Yep.
and first, let me thank you for this extensive demo. And I mean, for those of you who have never built an application, it might be a lot of information. So what we're doing is we're creating a lot of short videos. So we'll soon have a video section on our webpage as well. Right now we have we post everything on YouTube, but very soon it will be posted on our website so that you can actually look at it your own pace. Because I realize this might be a lot of information for those who never built applications. For those who have built applications, I hope you can see how complete the vision is. So we can cater pretty much for any use case, and obviously we have work to do, on elements, and some of the the roadmap is public and is pretty extensive, but a lot of these things will be built between now and the summer, right? And when it comes to timeline view, Frederick, actually this will be released in the next 2 months, so that is also going to be very useful for project and task management type of use cases. So as we are a bit short of time, I'm gonna jump into the question. So there's a first question here from Gabrielle, which says, in your app, can you show how to change the location, the linked field for an event? I don't know if you can go back into that, Frederick, in the application. I think you probably want to change the location in the database, right?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I understand the question. So can you show how to change the location, the linked field for an event? You want to change it through the application builder? Well, actually, yeah, that's what we've done for employees and volunteers. So that's a form that I was creating that changes a linked field. If you only have one element, you can easily replace it. If you want to add an element, well, then you need the workaround I have shown. So where I update the row and I say, okay, take all the current items, add a comma, and add the new items to it.
Then there's another question here from Theo, which is, how can I set a filter or search for users? So let's say volunteer wanted to search for a specific event.
Yeah. Well, it's also something that is coming in the next releases, that you can have a search field on top of your table. But for the moment, I would take here the demo application, my homepage. So if I add a text field, sorry, this is just a text element. If I add a text input field over here, I can type something in this field, and well, actually it's a form you're creating also with a button. And then in my page settings, I can create a page search results, and I can pass the text through here. In this page, I create the data source for, let's say, found locations, list my rows from my locations table, and well, search is the query that I'm passing. But yeah, that might be a little bit rather a complex process. We're working on searching and filtering as part of the table element.
Okay, then we have another question here. Is it possible to display linked fields from the database on the application?
Yes, so 2 ways. For let's have a look here. My employee application, the event details. Well, actually, what I'm showing here is my team members. Team members is a link field. Give me all the team members and show their value. So I can show the ID, or I can show the value. Another thing you can do is say, okay, for my location, for example, I have a data source. Show me all the locations where events hosted have my argument. So in this way, I can show linked fields either as a string, as text fields, text following each other separated by a comma, or as separate items in a table.
Okay, thanks, Frederic. So here's another one. Is there a way to present a multiple select field from Baserow on a website and allow website users to modify the values, syncing them with the data in Baserow? So maybe we can answer that first, because then there's a second one after that.
You can display it. That's what I've done here in my demo application. So outdoor, trail outdoor, those are values from a multiple select field. If you want to modify them for existing values, it's the same as a linked field. So you put a comma and then the text after it. If you want to add new values, then you first need to create those new values in your table. So this would involve, I think, the IFrame element where you make an API call to add the new elements to your table. Let's say for those kind of scenarios, I would actually use a link to table field where you create a form. You first create a linked record, and then you can reuse this record.
Then additionally, I would like to add a long text field on the website to allow the same text editing from the website, which would automatically update the Baserow database. It will be a recruitment customer website where a customer can change these values to communicate the status of the recruitment process for specific candidates.
Yeah. So I have my events here. My event has a long text field. So in my demo application, let's create quickly a data source for events. Gonna get a single row with ID number 1. I create a form. My form has a text input field, and the default value for that text input field will be the description. So I can add the description over here, and if I, I will set it multi-line, and if I store it, I can update it to my database.
Great. Then there's a question about a dashboard. So how about a dashboard that allows, hold on, let me just make sure I have, how about a dashboard that allows you to apply one or more real-time filters?
Yeah, very short answer is a work in progress. So dashboards are definitely on the timeline. I showed you the actually the application we used for the Global Industries event last week. So it's already possible through the iframe element, but if you really want to start building dashboards, just give us a little bit more time to build these features into the application builder.
Yeah, exactly. So then there's a good question here. How can we manage the visibility per user type, right? So because the whole idea of having an application interface is kind of that everybody has its own view depending on, say you're in marketing or you're in HR or in finance, you want to be able to build these personalized views per persona or per role right in the company. So yeah, maybe we can explain a little bit how that would work in terms of do you do that based on the roles that you have set within the database, right? Whereby you say, okay, marketing people are in that workspace, and then the application will expose only that data, and then you create a separate application for the HR team. Do you do that in the application builder yourself, where basically it's you do the authentication at that level? I guess that's what Gabrielle's question is about, right? Because building the views is, I mean, I think we demonstrated that today, right? So you can pretty
Yeah.
much build any view that you want, and you can link to any data source you want. So obviously, you can connect to the different tables, but then, if you want to have, yeah, I guess question to Gabriel, do we need to have 7 different apps for 7 different user types, right? So, maybe Frederick, you want to also will give my view on that, but I'll let you answer first.
Um, yeah, my answer will be pretty short. I think it's work in progress. So what we have now is, well, it's kind of a workaround. It's not the perfect approach. It works if you only have 2 roles. Then you can play with the URL a little bit. Then you can make a URL, for example, /event/admin or /event/user. And the admin sees more than a user. But let's have a look at the roadmap. Yeah, so the filter sorting and so on, it's on the roadmap. But we discussed it last week. Also on our roadmap is role permissions. So when I create here for my demo app in my settings a user source, where I now say, okay, this is email, username, and the password, I will also be able to set a role. For example, now I have team members, program coordinators, and so on. And based on the role, in my visibility tab, I will be able to say, okay, this element or this page, well, can be visible for admins only, for internal users, for external users. But yeah, like many things, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, so Gabriel still has a lot of questions. So I'm just in
Yeah.
the interest of time, not sure we're going to be able to answer them all here. So maybe Gabriel, I don't know if you are active in our community, but
Yeah.
if so, all the questions that have not been answered, I'd ask everybody post them into the application builder forum on our community page. They'll be picked up, tomorrow, so we can answer them all, and it's visible to everyone. So okay, so great, Gabrielle, that you've been doing that already. So it's maybe some questions around how we're going to price the application builder, right? So I want to say a few words around how it's going to be included in the product. So it is open source, right? So there will be, as we have with the database, there will be a free version of the application builder, right? And there is a free version of the application builder already. We'll continue to have the same logic as with our current open core business model. That means that if you are a database customer, right, who's a paying customer, you will also have access to the paid features that will be part of the application builder. That's just part of your license. So if you have a license for as a Baserow database user, you automatically have the license for the application builder and be able to build and edit and publish applications. Users which are external users and do not have a Baserow license. So, in the free version, you'll have certain capabilities in the application builder, and your external users will, consume these capabilities and also be free. And then if you start going into a little bit more of the advanced features that you usually are required for a bit of a broader audience, then you will be, paying a license for your external users, and that license will be quite a bit cheaper. We don't publish yet the final pricing because we're still finalizing that, and it will be made available somewhere at the beginning of the summer. But the idea is that that pricing will be significantly lower than the database license cost for the paid plans, because the assumption is you'll have a lot more external users than you have maybe database users, right? So stay tuned on that. We'll announce that probably in July this year. In the meantime, please provide your input. The data, the application builder roadmap is there. It's public. We review it on a constant basis, right? We do release every month, as you know. So your input is really appreciated. So continue to engage on the community, and then for the rest, we'll probably be launching some of these competitions, to get some visibility of what people are building with the application builder. So for now, I want to thank everybody for coming. Thanks, Frederick, for the great demo. Really appreciate the work you put in there. And if you have a project and you want some help, what we typically do, we listen to your use case. We get Frederick or someone else from the team to help you build a prototype, right? So we can do that definitely if you're interested. So don't hesitate to reach out. And thanks a lot, and have a great day and a great evening.